Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to specifically talk about a possible path to success for the game at a much more broad and impressive level. Because the reality is, I'm going to be very open and honest with you. This week has been terrifying for me and for my hopes for the future of Dungeons and Dragons. There are two things that happened this week. ICV2 released an article that had very compelling evidence that Hasbro may be positioning Wizards of the Coast for sale. That's terrifying to me, and the reason why is I've already watched once while Wizards of the Coast was purchased for not Dungeons and Dragons. When it was purchased, when Hasbro bought Dungeons and Dragons in 1998 bought Wizards of the Coast in 1998, the reality is there are a lot of people who believe, and I believe this, they didn't really even care about Dungeons and Dragons. What they really cared about was the Pokemon license, which lasted 5 years, right? So that was a captive acquisition, right? Dungeons and Dragons wasn't even the thing that was being purchased, right? We could be looking at the same thing again. The reality is, I'm convinced we have a whole bunch of problems with Dungeons and Dragons because nobody but me understands what Dungeons and Dragons actually is and how it has a path to victory in this world, in today's world, right? Because it's not intuitive. Dungeons and Dragons is not intuitive, and its path to success is not actually intuitive. It is non-intuitive. All right. The other thing that scared the living bejesus out of me was Warner Brothers announcing that every single one of their 2020 theatrical release movies that were built for theatrical release will never see theatrical release window that they enjoy by themselves without having to everything Warner Brothers makes is going straight to HBO Max, right? So these theatrical release movies really won't enjoy a traditional theatrical release, right? They'll skip the big screen and they'll be just kind of punted over, rolled in to that crusty, useless, non-event, small screen HBO Max streaming service, right? It's horrific. Dune, right? New Dune, right? This could have been a multi-billion-dollar new trilogy. What's it going to be now? Movie of the week, right? Terrifying, right? Why? What's that got to do with D&D? D&D, this threatens the entire movie industry. D&D needed its shot at being a multi-billion-dollar Hollywood trilogy. And now it looks like there's even less chance of that happening than there ever was, right? So if we are watching right now Dungeons and Dragons shot at macro success, shot at big dog energy, you know what I mean? Like real American baller success, the way Star Wars had, the way Marvel has had, the way, Pirates of the Caribbean had, the way Harry Potter had, and the way very few other movies had, right? Dungeons and Dragons was always on that short list. It was supposed to be on that red carpet, and it never got its chance. And now this Warner Brothers HBO Max thing is really going to threaten its ability to ever get there. And it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating for me to see this possible future just evaporate. So with that, right, I'm not just going to sit around and watch while this happens, right? I'm going to give my 2 cents and give what I think very well may be another path to success for Dungeons & Dragons that I think almost nobody really realizes. So right now, if ICV2 is right and Hasbro Gaming is positioning Wizards of the Coast for sale, then what that means is they don't really see the value of Dungeons and Dragons, right? And I think this is true. I really think nobody in the world really sees Dungeons and Dragons value clearly, except me, right? Like, and please, if you see anybody else say what I'm saying, point me to them because I'd love to listen to their content, right? But the problem is everybody in the world, every D&D commentator I've ever heard of, every tabletop role-playing game designer thinks Dungeons and Dragons is a game. I'm the only person out here saying it's not. I don't think, it is my opinion, that Dungeons & Dragons is not a game. It is a vector, okay? It is a vector. It is a carrying mechanism that carries art, literature, and gaming, right? Now, if that seems complicated and non-intuitive to you, it is, right? What Gary Gygax did in 1974 is unprecedented, right? And if you think it's a game, you tell me why it's 750 pages long at the minimum, right? And why it's a game that tells people you can ignore all these rules and then gives you 750 pages of rules. So if you're like, if I don't need any of these rules and it's just playing make-believe, why did you give me 750 pages of content? And the reality is, the reason why, in my opinion, is it was never a game. It was always a vector. And it was always carrying art, literature, and gaming. And it was so expansive and innovative and non-intuitive that no one has ever really understood what Gary Gygax created, right? So, if you understand what I understand, right, that it is a vector, not a game, right, in my opinion, then where you land is, what is its path to victory? Because I'll tell you right now, selling hardback books in a world where the entire print industry is under massive threat, right, where everybody's stopping reading physical books, right, that ain't going to be the road to victory, right? So what is? Well, the reality is, and this is going to get a little scary, but let's go there together. We're going to walk carefully. I'm going to hold your hand through this. It's its data, right? Dungeons & Dragons data is worth a fortune, right? Why? Okay? Well, here's the thing. Dungeons & Dragons is super weird, right? Like, it only attracts, it's just like podcasts. It only attracts super intelligent, super creative world breakers, world makers, world takers, world shakers. People who play role-playing games are the most creative, the most intelligent, the most unpredictable, the most potential holding creatures on the planet, right? When you become a Dungeons & Dragons player, there's a possibility you will one day be a dungeon master, right? You're going to tell a collaborative story together. That didn't exist before 1974. It did not exist before 1974. A collaborative story that you don't all control, that can be changed by polyhedral dice. It is so weird and so strange and so, like, massive, right? That the people who are attracted to it are not regular people. They are world breakers. They are world makers. They are world shakers, right? They are, and look at it, right? Go to Silicon Valley and you tell me how many of those multi-billionaire CEOs have not played Dungeons & Dragons. Short list, I bet, right? Go to Hollywood, where they're making the large, where, you know, up until the pandemic, they were making the largest narrative stories in the world. Stories that literally were watched in every country on the planet, right? How many of those script writers, how many of those script doctors, how many of those directors haven't played Dungeons & Dragons? Short list, baby, short list, right? And that's the issue, is the people, and right now, Wizards of the Coast isn't even tracking who's buying their game and who's when you buy a PHB, frankly, in my opinion, they should give it to you for free and just ask for your name and your phone number and your address. That should be the business model, but we're not there. And the reason why is people don't understand Dungeons & Dragons. It's not their fault. Dungeons & Dragons is outrageously non-intuitive. Dungeons & Dragons is, we are still exploring what Dungeons & Dragons is, right? It is a dungeon in itself. Came out in 1974. It has lasted until 2020. If you think you know what it is, think again. It is a vector. It carries art, literature, and gaming. And there's really nothing like it on the planet. It's an element of Americana. It's an element of innovation, right? And the reality is, we're still crafting what this thing is, we as a community. And right now, I warn you, don't listen to people who tell you it's just a game. Ridiculous. That is an absurdity. It's the same thing as if somebody were to say, football, baseball, basketball, they're just games. Oh, by the way, in a year where, we're having more problems than ever, we found a way to make sure that they didn't disappear. Were they just games? Or were they lifestyles? Were they traditions? Were they, life-shaping transformations of who we are as communities? That's what Dungeons & Dragons is. It's a vector, right? To say it's a game is understanding it at the shallowest level, right? And what might be a massive path to success for it is just embracing that the list of the people who play it may be more valuable than what you can get for actually selling the product. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.